How are you? Thank you. If anybody knew what we just went through, trying to figure out how to connect with each other, insane.
20 minutes of tech. Well, there you go. We need a tech
Yeah, but thank you so much for dealing with it. Thank you for the patience that you have, and thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. So, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the listeners about what you've been through, what you had to go through. I'm just going to remove myself so you get the mic, okay?
Yeah. My name is Mark Everett Kelly, and I had stage 4. I was diagnosed with stage 4 uh, rhabdomyosarcoma. That was in December 12th, 1990. So I was 16 years old. And when that happened, uh, rhabdomyosarcoma was uh, a death sentence. It was very hard to treat. And a lot of the patients that they had treated before wound up dead. So I was put on a very uh, experimental protocol, and it was very aggressive. And it was designed to just destroy my bone marrow and then give it back to me in a bone marrow transplant. So that's what I had. I was only the second or third person to have a bone marrow transplant at Sloan Kettering. As I got better, transplant was really hard. Transplant, I almost died a number of times. I had so many things go wrong. My bladder exploded because of the radiation, and I almost bled to death. I had platelet transfusions every day, blood transfusions every day. There was a weekend where they told my parents that I wasn't going to make it. That have everyone come in the family and come see him because he's going to die. And but God kept me alive during all of that, and I managed to survive. And since then, I mean, it's been 29 years since then. What's happened is the American Cancer Society refers to them as late effects. And I had a career working at ESPN. I was a researcher for 10 years. Um, and I loved the job. I loved sports. I was an athlete before I got sick, and I had offers to play college and basketball, baseball. That's what I wanted to do. So a large part of that was taken away, and then I was able to kind of get some of that back when I worked for ESPN, and then that was taken away. So I'm used to cancer taking away things, even if you so-called beat cancer, because when you make it through treatment and then you are cancer free, you feel like, okay, well, now I can get back to my normal life. But there really is no normal life anymore for a survivor that deals with the side effects of the treatment, because the treatment is poison. You have chemo and radiation in you, and that really affects your body. And they're finding out more and more with research that when you do it in kids, 16 or adolescents, um, the long-term side effects might take a little while, but they get to you. And they got to me in about 10 years later in the form of lymphedema and Crohn's disease.
So, Mark, I just have a question. When you're 16 and you go through this, what goes through your mind as a 16-year-old? Where were you at in your mind?
Well, it was like any other 16-year-old. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to uh, live the normal life of a teenager. There was so much that I looked forward to. You wait, till you get to 16 to kind of do the things that you had wanted to do. I wanted to be able to drive. I wanted to be able to, date and do all the other things that a normal 17-year-old does. But that got really interrupted. It was funny because it was at a time when you just learned to understand all of your abilities. As an athlete, I worked really hard in the summer of 1990 to develop my basketball skills, baseball skills. I was so excited for the season. And 3 games into the season, I'm really tired when I'm playing. I find myself, I had asthma, but it was a different type of tired. And next thing I know, I have this big, I had a lump that was on my, it was in an area that's uncomfortable. It was on my butt. And I thought it was a byproduct of medication I was taking at the time. At the time, I was on medication for bad acne, and I thought that's what it was. So even my dermatologist, he didn't even want to look at it. I guess he didn't really want to stare up my ass and say, okay, this is what it is. I mean, he had never seen this type of thing before. So when it got to the point where it was just unbearable and I could no longer go to the bathroom, I could no longer sit down, that's when I went to the doctor, and they said, well, they thought it was an abscess. And they operated on me, tried to remove it, and then they almost killed me there on the operating table back then. So all throughout the process, it seems like I was fighting off being able to stay alive. And transplant was especially like that. So now, after I get through transplant and I've survived all these things, you think, okay, well, now I've so called beat cancer, but you have the chemo and the radiation did a number of long term side effects. And in like 2003, my lymphedema really started to show, and my right leg blew up to about 3 times the size of my left leg. And then Crohn's disease, I started off with IBS and then colitis, ulcerative colitis, and then it progressed to Crohn's disease, where I would get these blockages. And I wouldn't, when you get a blockage, intestinal blockage, it can kill you. So you have to go to the hospital, you have to have IVs, you have to do tests. Um, so those are things that I've had to maintain now. And the career I had, I first wanted to be an athlete, then couldn't do that. Well, then I had a career at ESPN, and now that I had to go on disability because they didn't even allow me to work from home, and I couldn't do that. So that was about 10 years ago, and now I'm really trying to give back all I can, because I still think that regardless of everything that's happened, I have to find a way to provide for myself, provide for my family, and that's what I want to do. I think God gives us all things that we're good at, all things that we can still do. And I still think I have a purpose. A purpose is my message. So
you've been through so much. You've been through a tremendous amount throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
In fact, from childhood, you said you were working. You used to work as a journalist or something like that, a commentator. You did, you did basketball. You did baseball. You were very, very active. Today, what are you able to do, and what are you unable to do?
Well, if you look at me, you can see, I look like a normal person. That's the thing on the outside. The problem is on the inside. So dealing with Crohn's disease, you feel like you're tied to going to it's very uncomfortable to deal with. It can be very humbling thing to deal with. So what I'm able to do is anything that on a daily basis it's inconsistent. That's what drives me insane. Is that one day I'll feel fine. And when I say fine, I mean fine for me, meaning that I won't have any major emergencies of having pain or going to where there are some days where I cannot leave the house because you go to the bathroom like 16, 17 times before noon. Okay. And when you're in a situation like that, it's just so hard to do anything, never mind go to a job. So the problem isn't, do I feel good enough to do that? On most days, I think I could, but the consistency of it. So if, there's nobody who really wants to hire somebody that, okay, well, it has to be, you're on my timeline. I'll come in when I can. I'll work when I can. If I can't, well, you gotta have to deal with it. There's not many people that would do that. So you have to be in a way to employ yourself. And that's why one thing I've always loved to do, and I always felt like there was a calling on my life after I got better, to do public speaking and to go and tell people about my story. It's very natural to me. I love it. I love being in front of people. I love sharing my story. I love seeing how a crowd interacts, how they react to my story, and be able to communicate with them and be able to, when you touch somebody, okay, and you can see on their face, because there are a lot of people that have been through pain, there are a lot of people that have suffered and know what I'm going through, but can relate to that. And then they see me and they say, holy cow, this is somebody who really has been through a hard time. This inspires me to get through what I'm going through. Even if it's something that's not even close to like cancer, everybody has something that is in their life that they struggle with. That's something that they need to persevere about. And along with finding, in the last couple of years, finding something I wanted to get back to. That's where I said, okay, I had written a book maybe about 5 years after all that stuff happened, and I never got it published. And to me, it's like so kind of hard to know where to go, and there's so many charlatans out there. You don't know who to trust. And so I was able to get my book published in the last year, and this is it. It's called My Scars Tell a Story. Okay, and it basically is before. It deals with my life before I got sick, right? Because I wanted to give some people something to relate to. So it shows, I'm a normal kid, 16-year-old kid, have normal, things that like any kid. And then this happened. So how did I adjust to it? How did my parents deal with it? My mom especially. Wasn't for my mom, I don't know if I would have made it. I mean, my mom gave, mothers give their life for their kids, and especially mine. And, I have the best mother in the world. So I think, and my Uncle John came out and helped my mom, my sisters, everybody in my family. And then so uh, that's how I got through some of that. And that kind of explains the process in the book so people can see
I
exactly.
saw the picture of you and your mother. The picture that you put. I saw the picture of you and your mother
Yeah.
on the actual Facebook where I put the picture of the live.
Yeah.
So today, are you able to work? Are you handicapped? What is the term? How do you manage on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, I'm disabled, so to speak. Okay, disabled in the point that I'm not able to consistently provide work, and that's because of on a day-to-day basis I can feel fine, and then I'll have a major blow up, and that major blow up will knock me out for 3-4 days, a week at a time. I'll have to be hospitalized if I get a blockage. So that kind of stuff is really hard to be consistent and to be able to work for somebody else. So that's why I started, okay, well, if I can't work for somebody else, maybe I can work for myself. And that's why I wrote the book. And again, it takes you through, it doesn't go into my later life. It just deals with before I got sick and then everything I went through during transplant, from diagnosis to when transplant ended. And then there's also a chapter in there that my mom wrote about what a parent goes through watching their kids suffer. I think that's really amazing. My mom's a really good writer too. But that so many parents could be able to relate to that, because what it's like to see their kid, and then, that's when nothing more horrible can happen to a parent than watching their child suffer. And I think my mom really gets into the details of that very well. She expresses herself very well. So, and now as far as I'm concerned about what I'm doing now too, I wanted to see to get the momentum of if my book could sell. Then I have something that I could show to people that are looking for speakers, that are looking for inspirational messages. And here, this is something I did. This is my story. Anytime anybody wants me to come and talk about it, I'm open. That's what I want to do. So then another way I've decided to promote that is how can I help survivors now? And I started a blog called Living as a Cancer Survivor. You can find it at my website, ckmagicsports.com. That's a website I started about 3 years ago when I got into podcasting, sports podcasting. And that's another thing I'm really good at, sports and sports history. So all these kind of things are interloped as far as what I can do now. And my blog is up Monday and Thursday on our website. It's Living as a Cancer Survivor, and it's on ckmagicsports.com. There's a heading that goes there, and you can find it on that website. Then you can also on that website find my book. And for people who are looking to support me, looking to read and find out about my story, or wanting to get in touch with me, that's the best way that they can.
Great. So we can find your book on your website, CK Magic Sports. I'll put that up. And otherwise, we can find it on Amazon, as you got the link there. Mm-hmm. Amazon, amzn.to/2n2ws5u. Probably easier to go to your website. Mark, tell us, you used to also do motivational speeches or speeches in schools and things.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. I enjoy going to high schools and speaking to the kids. I can relate to a lot about what a high school kid goes through. It's like they see me up there and they say, okay, well, who's this guy? This guy's old. I'm 45 years old. I don't think I'm that old. But once I get into telling my story and say, okay, here, I was in the same position you were in. I thought I had all these days. I thought I had the future was mine. Okay. And then it can be taken away from you like that. So it gives you perspective as far as what is important in life. And those are the type of things I blog about. Yesterday, I blogged about dependability, about how important it is to keep your word with whatever you're in. If you're in business, if you're in a relationship, if you're in a friendship, telling somebody you're going to do something and following through on it, very important. But also